I'm Danny Gorney, creator of Sleepwalkers Volume 1, Adulting Sucks, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Danny Gorney about his new graphic novel, Sleepwalkers Volume 1, Adulting Sucks. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Danny is a freelance writer and editor living in Toronto. Danny completed his degree in medieval literature in 2014, and now he writes comics for a living. While producing his graphic novel Sleepwalkers, Danny has published projects including The House of Doom, The Myth Butcher, and Cygnus Imperium. Sleepwalkers Volume 1, Adulting Sucks, is a graphic novel about life after graduation, adulting while millennial, and imagining yourself as a superhero with some cosmic horror. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Danny Gorney about his new graphic novel, Sleepwalkers Volume 1, Adulting Sucks. So, Danny Gorney, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me, John.
Appreciate your time. Before we get started with all the questions, though, I want to ask you, what's on your bedside reading table? What are you reading today?
Today, I am reading a really fun fantasy comic called Songs for the Dead. Vault published it. It's by not Shane Heron, somebody else. Either Andrea Fort and Michael Heron. Yes. I met them at Toronto Comic Con this year. They're great people. Mm-hmm. They're really fun. And I'm also reading, and I need to dig this up because my bedside table is large and full of books. Another fantasy thing with witches by the Kill Shakespeare guy, Connor. The Last Witch, that's what it's called, which is gorgeous. Yeah. I'm working on a fantasy project, and I need to keep reading more fantasy stuff. So both of them are really fun. The Last Witch especially is so pretty. It's difficult to express how pretty it is. And it's very, 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 very good. Songs of Dead is also very, 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 very good. And It's about a happy-go-lucky necromancer who wants to do good things and ends up in all kinds of trouble and also raises corpses.
There you go. Yeah, I've heard lots of good things about both books and all the creators working on it. So good stuff to be reading today. I want to get right to the topic of discussion, which is your Sleepwalkers Volume 1. I know we've talked about some of the issues in the past, but now you've got a Volume 1 coming out. Maybe for those not familiar with the story, how would you describe it to someone?
Sure, I'll just go through my basic copy because I have this reasonably coherent now. So the sum of the story is bachelor's degree in hand. Faith Richmond's big dreams soon meet the reality that wanting to change the world doesn't mean you actually can. Struggling to find work as she watches her friends get ahead, it feels like her dreams have become nightmares. And what she doesn't know is that she is making a difference. When she sleeps, her subconscious takes over, becoming a real superhero, making the world better in ways she never imagined. Convinced her life won't fail to start forever, Faith decides the only way to deal with the struggle is to push through it, risking her dignity and her future in the progress. And that's when the real nightmares begin.
Wow. Yeah, it's a cool story, I tell you. And your subtitle is Adulting Sucks. So you definitely make a statement with that title, don't you?
I do. And this sort of leads to a little bit of the what's different that you were gesturing at before. I think so. Last time we were talking about this, I'd basically done I need to stop editing this stuff run of chapters 1 through 3 as single issues. And 4 hadn't been completed yet. It was still in editing, but was largely done at that point. A lot of the feedback I got from my early readers is that, the first issues are good, and issue 4 really is, it's got that big through the looking glass moment. It's it's that kind of book? Cool. So it really ties the first 3 issues together. which makes sense. I wrote this entire project, all 12 issues of it were scripted before anyone drew anything. So I knew where it was going to go. I knew how I divided up the story arcs. I just didn't realize how much more effective they were as story arcs as compared to individual issues. Now, as I think we were talking about last time, I got into comics with characteristically bad life timing, in the sense that I'd started working on Sleepwalkers. I was like well through pre-production. I was starting to get some art in, started working over at the Raid studio, and with one of my colleagues over there, Damian Canta, and a good friend of mine, Joseph Wilke, who's based out of Seattle, we put together this horror mini anthology, House of Doom. And then the lockdown started halfway through the Kickstarter campaign. So the last couple of years, I've just been heads down, produce, hoping that eventually the stuff will hit when I can actually go to things and find my audience. So Sleepwalkers, I've been working on for so long. I know it's a good story. As time has gone on, I feel like it has remained timely and valid, especially in terms of the sort of social projects that it's engaging with. And that's great. That's stuff I like about it. That's a terrible way to sell a book.
Right.
So this year I've been able to finally go to conventions, have my own tables, really start meeting people, making some friends, hopefully making some fans. And Adulting Sucks is pretty much the pitch for this book that actually worked.
Yeah.
And once I realized, hold on, I keep saying this, and also I kind of like it. Also, it's got that 21st century young people communication language going on, which is communication I sometimes use in real life. I was like, okay, well, adulting sucks. You know what? No, that's a pretty good statement for the book. It's adulting. The story is very sort of slice of lifey for the first few issues. It's like a year in time, those 4 chapters. And because it's so slice of life, it's like, yeah, no, adulting sucks is a reasonable thesis statement here. And I sort of, since late July, when I came to that realization, I've just been working to sort of compile everything as a book and get my pitch down pat for my Kickstarter launch.
Right. Yeah. No, it's exciting stuff. I tell you, when you see it all put together, and that's what I wanted to ask you next. You talked about your collaborators. You didn't do this alone, and they've helped you out. But looking back after putting this all together, did you learn anything from the experience and the effort of bringing these people together, like something you could use again for a future project?
Well, what's funny, and I alluded to this earlier, is that this is actually my first comic project that went to production. So before this, I had a fair amount of creative production experience. I'd done some work in film, done some work sort of in video, done a lot of work in live events, did a PhD, which is another sort of different type of creative production with similar phases at any rate. But this was Greg was the first one of the first illustrators I worked with. Felipe was the first colorist I worked with. He's still the only colorist I've hired directly. My colorist for Cygnus Imperium, someone else introduced me to him. I was like, yeah, good enough. I still don't really know how color works and how to judge a colorist. It's complicated. Marco's the first letter I had. Kenny, I met randomly at TCAF must have been 2019. He's great. He's still doing my cover art. So all of these people are they're sort of who I cut my teeth on, as it were, as a creator in comics. And I've finished 5 more books since then, working with a ton more people than that. The Myth Butcher, the one I did on Kickstarter in early 2021, that was a bunch of short stories I wrote to keep myself from going insane at the beginning of the pandemic. That was 3 illustrators. So I've gone out of my way since then to work with as many people as possible and really improve my craft. And it's improved my writing a lot to work with different people and to figure out what gels with them. It's helped improve my storytelling in a strange way. Sometimes you need to be explicit about things. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes your panel directions need to be explicit. Sometimes they don't. It depends on how much of an image that I really have in my head when I'm writing. And often I don't have a specific image in my head when I'm writing. I'm just like, here's what happens. Sometimes I'm like, no, I want to see it like this. I've developed peculiar techniques involving square brackets and the space bar to like write in a script broadly what I want a panel layout to be like, which actually has helped a few illustrators I've worked with be like, oh, this is what they want. Cool. Right. And without the pages from Sleepwalkers to show that, hey, I'm a writer who is paying people, who's producing stuff, who's getting stuff done. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to finish any of the stuff I finished since I started this. So in a way, for me, coming back to Sleepwalkers this year is like a very, very freaky look through that funhouse mirror of like, oh, this is where I started. Okay, it's not bad actually. Cool, let's go with that. But like, there's a lot of yeah, I've learned since then. And not to say that anything here is bad, of course, it's great, and it still lands, and I really love this project. We're halfway through drawing issue 6 right now. Still making it in the background. It's just been going on in the background the whole time.
That's good.
Yeah.
I was this is out of left field. I was just reading on Twitter. Howard Wong, a creator, just put a question out to the universe asking what writing tools people use for software programs. Not to put you on the spot, but do you use a specific writing program to help you with creating comic books?
I don't. I've got a variety, a complicated system of notebooks, digital notebooks, and mostly Microsoft Word. I've got, I can use Celtics or like Writer Duet if I really need to, but I'm not super worried about formatting. I just have a Word template that does the trick. Like, it's nice to be using screenwriting software. It's really, really easy when you're going between direction and character tags and dialogue tags and whatever. And it's a giant hassle when you start trying to format what a panel break looks like.
Right.
Or what, a page break looks like. And it's just enough of a hassle that I'd rather just do it manually.
For those who haven't read the books and the volumes, you've deliberately set this story in Toronto, and you've called out particular landmarks. I'm wondering, why did you choose Toronto specifically?
So I'm from Toronto. When I started writing this, I had somewhat recently moved back to Toronto. I went to school in Ottawa. I really like Toronto. I've lived in a bunch of places. I've lived in Japan. I've lived in like London, England. Being around the world, I really still like Toronto. Like, I'm happy that I'm here. Right now, I'm living really downtown. I can see the CN Tower from my house. I can walk there in 20 minutes. Seeing Toronto has always inspired me, and that's a thing. I mean, I wanted to do a project that was about reality with a twist.
Okay.
And in order to get away with the sort of like social issues I'm dealing with, like underemployment, suspicion of race-related injustice, that sort of thing. These are all sort of tangential in the book, but they're very, very present constantly throughout it because this is life in reality for many people. One of the things that made Toronto particularly compelling as a place to do stuff is we're not America, where everything is sort of extra and violent and there's firearms. So being in a situation where stuff's going wrong and people broadly aren't necessarily explaining what, terrible beliefs they have or whatever, or, in the case of a character like Faith, where the first answer isn't always racism, means that this gets to not be a project about, for example, blackness, but actually just about the malaise of not being sure what the problem is if you can't find your place in the world, which has been my experience. Whereas I am not black, so that hasn't been my experience. I'm not comfortable sort of vocalizing for that experience. So it let me sort of generate a feeling of unease without having to resort to the extremes.
Right.
Also,
Okay.
again, it's a great city. It's
Hmm.
multicultural. It lets me show a Canada I sort of believe in,
Right. Okay.
and
Makes
that
sense.
has a lot that inspires me, that makes me happy to be here, and that is a lot of the social strength of this country, is being able to get together with very, very strange people and live in very, very, especially in Toronto, hilariously linguistically and culturally diverse neighborhoods
Right.
right beside each other unproblematically.
Yeah. It can be eclectic. That's for sure. That's for sure.
It's the best part of it.
There you go. Well, wanted to ask you, I was reading chapter 4, and one of the characters named Zach, he is introduced to the story, and all of a sudden there's a change in the art style. It's almost like fantasy anime-like. It is a little jarring compared to the rest of the art in the story, and I understand why it's done, but I'm wondering, do you plan to revisit that story in the future, or maybe you can explain what its purpose was?
Sure. I mean, so the part that you're referring to, so this is Faith meets Zach, and he just tells her a story. And so the art change goes from like realistic Western comics to, yeah, somewhere in the ballpark of super deformed manga style. And I just wanted the art in this section that Zach is narrating to feel like Zach is narrating it. We have Faith is talking to Haroon, who doesn't even get introduced on a page until issue 5, and they're from a space and time further along in the book, like issue 9 or 10. So they're looking back as to how they got to this place that the reader hasn't seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
Zach is a child, so he looks at the world like a child, but that doesn't mean, he doesn't want things that are valid for anybody, right? He wants to be strong and powerful and to be able to defend in a very particular way. And that defensiveness sort of comes out in the troll figure. And then also, of course, in the totally made up advertisement for a Lovecraft movie that he sees on the bus, like literally that
Yeah.
day, those sort of get melded together into this creature he psychically projects later on. So, he's a kid. Everything he sees around him is inspiration. And I just wanted to sort of use this visual element to really show that this is an important character. And the way he looks at the world is going to be important later. Because actually, he is a very important character, and the way he looks at the world is important later. This is not the last we've heard of him.
Very good. I was going to say, I know you're committed to Kickstarter for Volume 1, and you're working on that now. So based on your past experience with Kickstarter, what are you hoping that this platform can do for you that perhaps a traditional publisher can't?
Well, a couple of years ago, late 2019 and into part of 2020, I was trying to pitch this book to traditional publishers. And I didn't get a great response, but I still really believe in the story. So maybe that's because I hadn't really nailed down my pitch. Again, actually having a table and actually trying to talk to strangers and pitch the book, like, really brought the project together for me in a way where we're talking about it today. And I think with a lot more confidence than I was talking about the project as a whole last time. So I've kind of gotten there, but I also, it's been a while. I just want to get this out to have readers. And I feel like this is the pitch for it. Right. So the transition from dealing with this over the summer and realizing what I want to do to what am I doing now with it? I could have looked for a publisher, but really I didn't want to wait, especially and even given my pitches before. I mean, a bunch of those publishers don't even exist anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because the pandemic happened. Mm-hmm. Distribution is a total mess, blah, 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 blah. I'm just like, I've got a bit of an audience. I seem to be growing it meaningfully over Kickstarter. Like my campaigns have done progressively better over time.
That's great.
And that's over like a couple of horror anthologies, a crazy like early 20th century adventure book, and 2 issues of a sci-fi project with a giant robot that punches spaceships. So right. People are probably, I'm going to assume that some people are sticking around because they like what I do.
Sure.
Some of those people may even like are actually my friends in real life too, I'm sure, right? Like that's part of that crowd, but that's not all of that crowd. And the people I haven't met before are part of that crowd. is of course growing with every campaign, with every convention I go to. So I've got enough people to be really confident in getting this done. And I want to get this done. The story, again, I think it remains timely. Adulting does suck in so many ways. So many ways where, like, I've been reading a lot of bits and bobs from like anti-work and places like that as they pop up on my newsfeed. It's like, oh yeah, adulting still sucks in all the ways I thought it was going to suck. That's like right. A few years ago. Like it's actually worse. And in fact, it's so bad that people are actually doing something about it, which is great. But also, man, adulting really sucks. Everyone is super conscious about stuff like how inflation is affecting this economy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How the job hunt is a hot mess. Like either you're in it and you're totally valuable and everybody wants you, or you're not in it. And it's super confusing because everyone's got signs out saying like, yo, nobody wants to work. What they probably mean is we don't want to pay you properly. When someone's got a sign out saying that and they still won't hire you, well, what does that mean? Right? And so make no mistake, this very hot employment economy is still leaving people behind. And I feel really terrible for people who just graduated, people who can't afford to do an internship or whatever. Like all of that stuff you need to do requires having a network or having money or having the means to give up a ton of freedom just to let someone else boss you around. And if for some reason you don't participate in that, I mean, your chances go way down. So it's still so present in the conversations I'm seeing and talking to real humans about. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very relevant. That's for sure. So you've alluded in our conversation to more issues to come. So with that in mind, I want to ask you, what's next for you? Are you still working on Sleepwalkers and in addition to other projects too?
Indeed. Okay, so cool stuff about the Kickstarter is that, and John, I think you're going to find this appropriately me, I guess, based on how I'd be describing this project, is we've got Volume 1 as a trade paperback. One of the sort of prestige tier rewards is Volume 1 as individual issues, like in the way you saw them a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. One of the add-ons is outright issue 5 as a single issue.
Ah.
Yeah, it's just done. So this is actually sort of the release of issue 5 secretly. I'm not selling it as a release of issue 5, but it is. If people like really want more, they want to see where the story is going next, that's a great way to do that. So yeah, we're penciling issue 6. Issue 7, I think actually needs a bit of a solid rewrite, which I don't really want to do, but I want to sort of lean into these themes a little bit more. So there's like about 10 pages worth of 2-page sequences that just need like a fair amount of revision to hit the nail on the head harder. So I'm working on that. Just wrote a spoopy AF Halloween-y script that might go somewhere. Like literally yesterday, there's a werewolf. There's also a weird 1930s police interrogation device that someone put a picture of the patent application for on my Facebook that involves sticking a film camera in the skeleton of a human being, putting a megaphone in it, putting it behind some one-way glass, and giving it glowing red eyes, and then forcing the suspect in a criminal investigation to stare at this glowing red-eyed skeleton that is asking it questions and to confess to it, possibly by just being incredibly creepy and disarming. So, that's a fun little short story.
Okay.
I'm working on a fantasy project that I did. We did a short story with Kayla Byrne-Rainey. She has just come back, in air quotes, from the dead, as it were. She was really locked down and lost power and internet from a series of storms and hurricanes out in Florida where she lives.
Right, yeah.
She's back. She's safe. I have 100 pages of this written. We've been pitching publishers with it. So that's going to go into production next year. Cygnus Imperium, the sci-fi project, issue 3 is being colored, issue 4 is being drawn. So that's sort of on the go. And I am very, very slowly developing a teen drama.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know, right? So I don't know if this feels like a lot. That was definitely a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah.
I continue to be frantically producing things, although the new writing has slowed down a little bit. I suspect that once that teen drama comes together, that's going to change. And
Sure.
I've got enough in the pipeline that it'll be quite a while before I'm done making new things.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot on the go. So with that in mind, I'm wondering, where do you recommend people go to find out more about your current and your future projects online?
I have a very polite mailing list, and that's when I've got something new that's worth talking about. There's that. My Instagram at Danny Gorney, DANNY, all one word, is where I post some work in progress and other announcements. And I have a coffee page that I think you still have a link to kicking about. Don't have a dedicated website yet because I've been so busy creating things, I haven't done that.
Thanks to Danny for taking time to chat with me. You can discover more about Danny on Twitter at DJ Crash Override, on Instagram at Danny Gorney, that's DANNYGORNY, and at ko-fi.com/Danny Gorney. And you can find Sleepwalkers Volume 1 Adulting Sucks on Kickstarter.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification button. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.